Rashekum, and greetings from the House of Ra. Today, we will delve deeper into the saga of the Sankofa Dharma, volumes 1, 2, and 3. Today's message will be a continuation from the book's introduction. Master Bhagwan states, and I quote, "True freedom begins with mental liberation." End of quote. Thus, this book is not intended to be a driving force for black superiority based on the accomplishments of our ancient ancestors in Africa. It is intended to be a guide for the building of black self-respect as we are now. Self-respect stems from self-acceptance, which itself begins with the knowledge of oneself and of one's people based on study and analysis, not as defined by another group of people with their own agenda. Once we develop individual self-respect, it will automatically translate into a community-wide phenomenon, what Bhagwan Afrika calls the 100th monkey syndrome. We will then be in a position to build that culture of God men and God women he envisions. In the Master's own words, a person who is in a state of self-contempt and cannot accept himself, who fundamentally hates himself or herself, and who does not and cannot impute any self-value to himself, by definition, cannot love and respect anyone else. Once you start to develop self-respect on an individual basis and recognize the fact that you are a manifestation of the Supreme Being, for the first time, you are back in order, back in Ma'at. End of quote. The only way to make a thing whole is to gather up the splintered pieces. Therefore, Bhagwan begins his plea for the acquisition of knowledge with the slavery saga, the Ma'afa, the great disaster that caused our consciousness to be scattered. Because a people that do not know where they have been cannot chart the treacherous sea of ignorance on their journey to the shores of wholeness. Bhagwan states, you cannot have unity unless you have a common understanding, because a common understanding is the foundation of unity. How can unity arise when we have so many different understandings of why we are in the mess that we are in? Out of this common understanding, a common action will automatically arise. End of quote. Thus, the word unity does not have racist overtones. It simply acknowledges that no race of people will ever or has ever survived without unity within that group. This does not mean at the expense of other races. We are all connected, and what affects one affects all. However, to achieve unity, we must understand ourselves. And in order to understand ourselves, we must know and understand our history, as well as the history of others, including our oppressors. Otherwise, there is no continuity, no way to learn from the ancestors, to study the past and go forward. Knowledge is power. To quote the Master, this horrible state of affairs is due to our lack of self-knowledge and ignorance of our history. Knowledge of African history, philosophy, and heritage it bequeaths not only enhances one's self-esteem, but also generates the wisdom required to recognize and nullify the relentless efforts by this racist Western society to cripple and utterly destroy the innate intelligence of African humanity. There can be no genuine freedom for people of African descent unless there is first the liberation of our minds. End of quote. In Chapter 3, Bhagwan analyzes our condition and warns of the urgency of the situation. In other words, we need to assess our individual and collective condition, to consider, decide, and change. Given the gravity of our situation, there truly is no time to waste. Bhagwan states that blacks in America have more money than many countries have, but we control no economic institutions at all. There is disunity, so this money becomes ineffective and cannot be organized. Unity is the organizing principle in any community, and you cannot have unity where there is anger. You must understand the colossal degree to which we are mismanaging our anger at each other and the price that we are paying. This is a shame, and it must change. End of quote. He also reminds us that we must assume some of the responsibility for our condition through our refusal to explore our own spirituality. Though we did not personally start the Ma'afa, we are perpetrating it due to our ignorance and inertia. The Master says we can no longer continue to empower this white racist system with our creative energy and life force and then somehow excuse ourselves from also being responsible for the condition of the planet. It has to stop. End of quote. To emphasize that he is not advocating hatred or intolerance of any group or race, Bhagwan also points out in chapter 3, I am not advocating the destruction of white people, that they all should be wiped out or annihilated. Every form of the human race plays a major role in contributing to the overall balance and harmony on this planet. What I am saying is that the role African people play is very vital to the well-being of this planet, and that our failure to develop and unfold this dormant spirituality in ourselves not only will lead to our own destruction, but will also lead to the destruction of the whole human race. More to come. Stay tuned. Rasheka Ma'at.